Thank you, Adam. Well, our next question will go for something university specific, not specifically Durham, but students in general. And this is from Rebecca Brown. Should university places be allocated according to academic merit or social engineering? And we'll start with Carol this time from the Lib Dems.
That's quite a difficult question, isn't it? Because in terms of academic merit, it's sometimes easier to get good grades in a good school than it is in a school that's in a slightly more deprived area. But I think in general, if you were to ask me, then universities should actually base it to a large extent on academic grades, and to keep the quality of the students that you've got and the degrees that you get. But I think there should be some adjustment to allow people to make it from slightly less well-off backgrounds, and for people who haven't, I think the one thing we should change is, instead of it being something that you do at 18, 19, and then it's harder to get into if you want to go to university at 25 or whatever, we should make it something that it is able for you to come back and do.
Okay, moving on to Roberta Blackman-Woods from Labour.
Yeah, thank you. I think the obvious answer to the question is that university places must be allocated on the basis of academic merit. But you can put lots of things in place to support students, particularly those from lower socio-economic backgrounds, to do well at school. And I think Labour's policies are doing that. We have invested massively in education, and including Sure Starts, which you might think are very far away from universities, but actually it's about trying to get young people to have skills and qualifications, and trying to in some way negate a possible disadvantage in their background. So that's really important. But I also think it's necessary to have policies that encourage young people to go to university. Our manifesto says we want 75% of young people to either be an HE or FE or have an apprenticeship or a training place. I think that's really important, because we've got to keep skilling and reskilling our population. So the straightforward answer is academic merit, but let's look again, and I think we are in Labour looking at what we need to do to support young people to get the best qualifications they can.
I'm going to have to stop there, and exactly the same question to Nick Farley from the Conservatives.
Yeah, well, in the last 13 years, just to kind of contradict Roberta, there's been a fall in the number of students from low-income backgrounds going to Russell Group or Oxbridge universities, which I think is a very sad indictment of Labour's failures on social mobility. What I think, obviously, the answer to the question is it has to be academic merit, but the point is at the moment that children, especially from well-off backgrounds, have access to better schools because their parents can afford to pay for them. The Conservatives want to introduce a policy which basically sets up independent schools that are state funded, so we give children from low and middle income backgrounds the same access to the quality of education that rich children have in their private schools, but we give it to people whose parents can't afford to pay for them to go to school. And I think that, for me, is one of the biggest things that a government or a party can do, because if we give kids from low and middle income backgrounds the same quality of education, the fact that one kid's rich and one kid's from a poor family ceases to make any difference, because they've all got the same quality of education, and for that reason they can hopefully, we'll see a rise in the number of children.
I'm going to have to cut across you there, I'm sorry. To open up this debate a bit further then, if Roberta, to quote your figure, you said 75% of young people going to HE, FE, university education, etc., apprenticeships, that was right, thank you. Is it, do you think, sustainable to have that many people going into higher education? I mean, at the minute, graduates are finding it hard enough to get jobs as it is. Is it really, does the economy really need that higher skill set? And we'll start off with Carol this time, and then open up the floor completely to debate. Thanks.
Well, we don't think that there should be an arbitrary figure. What we think is that people should have the ability to either go to university or get vocational training or do an apprenticeship that is right for them. I think the worst thing is people who've gone to university and then find it exceptionally difficult to get a job and actually have a huge debt And some of them, and my nephew would be one of them, must be thinking whether it was perhaps the best thing that he could have done. And I think there's an issue about how many people go to university and how many people actually do vocational training, because there are many, many good jobs that you can do and do on-the-job training or be an apprentice or whatever. And I think it's about getting a parity between those.
I have to wind you up there. Who would like the first right of reply? Roberta.
I want to really stress that 75% is not only ITCHE, it's ITCHE, FE, apprenticeships and workplace training, because that's really important. We are the only party that is saying we want to keep increasing the number of people with higher level qualifications, because we recognise that if our economy is going to grow and have the high level skill jobs of the future, then we need to keep investing in our workforce. And I think it's an absolute disgrace, I have to say, that part of the Lib Dem policy that is attached to abolition of tuition fees is also saying we don't mind if the numbers going to university reduce. I think that's a wrong policy, a misguided policy, and I think every young person who has the should have an opportunity for further
just
training.
Stop you there, and Nick, you will get an opportunity to speak in a second. Carol, would you like to reply on that point very, very specifically? Very specifically.
Well, the fact is we want young people to actually do training that at the end of the day gets them into a job and a career that they'll enjoy doing. And if that's going to university or if that's doing vocational training or an apprenticeship, then we want them to make the right choices for themselves rather than the government set targets.
Now I must let Nick join the debate.
I'll speak now. What I would say is I think that the 50% limit was set because it sounds pretty good. Roberta's recited it. She probably had a bit of a smile on her face because it sounds good. It makes her feel happy to say it. But actually, 50% of jobs in the economy are not graduate level. So setting an arbitrary limit, inevitably, you're going to have people at university who then graduate but aren't able to get a graduate level job simply because the jobs do not exist. Obviously, we want to create them. We want a highly skilled workforce. What I would just say finally as well is I think actually there's kind of an academic qualifications like a university degree in some sense are overvalued, they're over idolised, and actually there's not enough focus placed on the fact that vocational qualifications are right for some people and actually are a very, very good thing. We've got to make sure that you're not seen as kind of copping out if you take a vocational subject, which at the minute I think you are, rather than doing an academic degree.
We have nodding and shaking all round on that. So, but we do have quite a lot of comment in this from the website and from our listeners, wherever they are around the world or in Durham. So I'll pass over to